Prayer beads. You know anything about prayer beads? Anybody use prayer beads? You ever use prayer beads?
The only ones I really know of are the rosary.
Okay, the rosary. What do they do with the rosary?
They say a prayer for each bead.
Okay. The Lord's Prayer, Hail Marys. I think I saw somewhere where they do even creeds and so on. Anything you can do a verse of scripture, Psalm 23. I know when I'm sitting in this chair, I make sure I take mine with me. This one usually is what I take with me and wrap it around my hand, and I'll pray the Lord's Prayer in Psalm 23 until I can start praying about something else because I'm nervous in this chair. So for me, it's a way of getting started in prayer in those situations where just starting to pray doesn't necessarily come naturally or easily because of the fear and panic. Um, Anything else about prayer beads that you know? How long have they been around? Any idea? Between 3 and 500 AD, they came about as a tool for prayer. The English word for bead evidently stands for prayer, which I didn't know until I studied prayer beads the first time. The root word BEDE, obviously, actually meant prayer. So prayer beads are used as a tool. Okay, there's no magic in them. They're not magic beads or anything like that. They're just a way of tactile stimulation for your prayers. You can keep track of prayers. Some of them started with a piece of leather or string with knots in it, just as a way of praying a prayer. In the same way we talked about circles last week, you could put a knot in a prayer for all your prayer requests. You could even tie the knot in a string or a piece of leather or whatever you had, ribbon, whatever it is, as you prayed for each person on your prayer list. Just a different way of looking at that. But most prayer beads come with knots or beads, and the beads can stand for things or represent things. They might be a bead that you have for a certain prayer. When you come to it, you know to pray the Lord's Prayer. When you come to this bead, you know to do the 23rd Psalm, whatever recite your favorite verse of Scripture. You can put them out. Some people have put strung beads together for people they pray consistently for, family, friends, spouses, children, so on. And so they'll choose a bead that represents that person. One person even said that they had invited all their friends to send them a bead. And so they knew, didn't say what they did if they got two beads the same, but they knew knew when they came to that bead on their prayer strand to pray for that person. And the other side of that is it was a reminder to pray for that person. We get busy and hectic, and some days we don't pray for some of the people that we should pray for. Excuse me. And so it's just a visual and a tactile stimulation, a reminder of that. The number of beads can vary. This one was based on Galatians 5, the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. There's one for children, prayer reminder, to praise and thank God, pray for others, pray for confession and pardon, pray for personal concerns. There's one based on the Lord's Prayer that each bead represents a line. And so it's specifically, you can choose that or you can use a form. All this came off the internet, so type in prayer beads for a specific passage, verse, scripture need, and you can get some guidelines for that. Same with YouTube videos. One of the things I ran across was making your own beads, which I'd never done. So if you would pass that around, take a strip of paper and a match. Don't light the match, don't play with the match, don't play with the fire, okay? I used a pencil. So we're going to try this first, just so you have it in practice. It's not something I've done on a regular basis. What the suggestion is, on one side you would choose a collar for your bead. or a variety of colors or whatever. On one side, you would color that strip of paper. On the other side, you would write either a prayer, a person or situation that you're going to pray for. You could write a verse of scripture, anything like that. And then what you do is you roll it up around the match and put a dab of glue at the end of it. Now, it works. I had these strips of paper already, so we're using them. The idea was to make a elongated triangle. One end is a 1/2 inch wide down to a tapered end on the other end, and it rolls up better and forms like a 3-dimensional oval bead. I'm not sure if I have one. It'd be something like this kind of thing. Yeah, instead of a round one. And this is something you could do once a week when you sit down. These are the people I'm going to pray for this week. You can make your own beads representing them, kind of thing, instead of having access. Most of us have some sort of string around the house. The nice thing about the match is a nice size for most strings. I used a pencil, which is a little big, but then you have a variety. I could use the hemp cordage and stuff that's bigger. So if you want to take a moment and try that out, go ahead with that. That was something that came out of one of the Crafting Gratitude books.
Do you want us to color it and write a verse, or just go ahead and wrap it?
However you want to do it, whatever you want to do with it. I'll give you a few minutes and I'll continue talking as you do that. Sorry. And I took the pens and pencils home, I think, not thinking we would use them. So I have a pen if someone needs one. But yeah, it was just a neat way of creating a bead specific for, sometimes the idea of finding a bead to represent somebody, I would spend a lot of time trying to find the right bead to represent that person or that situation or that prayer. And I may not have, 100 different varieties of beads at the house, because they can get expensive. Right now, if you like beads, and it's something you want to try on your own, right now at Accents, they're at Center Street. They're going out of business and having a sale. I bought 2 packages of the spacers, these silver spacers and the gold spacers down there. I pay $1.60 for the 2 bags, and they have a wide variety of beads to choose from. If I'd known they were on sale the way they were, I would have bought more, but didn't really think I needed more just for today. So, but this gives you a way of thinking about that person even as you're making the bead or that situation, or that verse of scripture, meditating on it as you're making the bead itself. And then you can customize it to represent that person or situation. So when you come to it on that strand, you know what to pray for. Maybe not years from now, but and these are things that can be changed out once you find the right length for your prayer beads, and you consistently use that length. You could always switch them out, taking the end apart, putting new beads on it for the following week, or you could make a new set each week that you pray, each day that you pray, if you wanted to do that. These were some, I'm not sure what these were. Pay had been bringing these home to me. And I thought these would make nice spacers, especially, but they could also be a particular bead for a particular person or situation. And you could cut these into, you could get 10 or 15, maybe even 20 out of it. I haven't tried cutting them, so I don't know. Those scissors will smash them more than cut them, probably. But you could do gratitude beads, since Thanksgiving's right around the corner. You could string some beads. You could add a bead to the strand each time you're thankful for something. You could do it if you're doing the 30 days of Thanksgiving over the course of November. Each day, add a bead to your strand so you have a visual representation. Yes, I did a thank you today. I said thank you. I sent a thank you note. I gave thanks to God for something or someone in my life. one of the interesting things I came across about beads when I was studying beads and prayer beads in particular was the Greeks have something called worry beads, and they're not used for religious purposes necessarily, but they're just a tactile stimulation when you're worrying, like stress balls and things like that are. But from a religious standpoint, from a faith standpoint, you could call them worry beads. These are fears that I have. These are concerns that I have right now. As a reminder to pray for those each and every day, take them to God. You could do things like take those off the strand as God answers that prayer. You could take them off as you have seen as God has seen you through that situation. If it's a fear or an anxiety or a worry that you have, you can trust that on God. You can take that off and place it somewhere else in the house. If it's something that you made, like a paper bead, you could actually throw it away. You could do things like burn it, giving that up to God, offering that as a prayer. And I'm rambling on, but those are things coming to mind as I talk about these things. Many religious groups use prayer beads in different ways. Muslims, Catholics, they're making their way back into the Anglican Church and Christian circles, and Christian churches. There's been prayer bead workshops done. I did a 5-week Bible study on Galatians 5 using prayer beads, where we started and ending by, as we studied it, we added beads to it and had spent some time actually putting together a prayer bead set for prayer life, reminding us to pray for the fruit of the Spirit. Thoughts or questions? Again, and then choose a string, and the length of the string, you want something longer than you actually need because you got to tie it off on both ends. And you want to test if you tie it off to the keychain, you want to test that. If you wanted to leave a loop there so that you could switch it out and put something else on the end of it besides the keychain later on, you're welcome to do that. Just things to keep in mind. So choose some beads, lay out a pattern, choose the length of string you need, add a little bit of extra. There's always scraps at the end, but you don't want to end up too short and have to shorten your prayer bead. You could tie knots into the spacers. The problem sometimes with knots is the hole in some of the beads are so big that a knot doesn't work, and that's another reason for the spacer. If you don't use spacers between any of the beads and the main part, you'll probably want to use one at the end so you can tie it off as a knot on the end. Tie it to the keychain. Start stringing your beads in the order that you want them in, and have at it.